You are listening to the Bureau Chiefs with Michael Serapio, a primetime politics podcast from CPAC. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Serapio. Well, the Prime Minister is standing by that speech he made in Davos last week, saying he meant what he said, despite a claim made by the Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, Scott Bessent, yesterday saying in an interview that Carney aggressively walked back some of his remarks in a recent conversation with Donald Trump. Well, take a listen to how the Prime Minister responded to that characterization.
But to be absolutely clear, and I said this to the President, I meant what I said in Davos. It was clear, it was a broader set of issues, that Canada was the first country to understand the change in U.S. trade policy that he had initiated, and we're responding to that.
Well, with that, let's bring in the Bureau Chiefs. Robert Fife is the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail, Tonda MacCharles, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, and Joël-Denis Bellavance, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse. Welcome back to the three of you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, however related it may be at this point.
It's early.
Listen, you know, there has been some debate as to the wisdom of Mark Carney giving that speech in Davos. People concerned about the impact it will have on Canadian trade. And if one believes the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Mark Carney, has some regrets himself about that speech, if you listen to the Prime Minister, well, then he has no regrets. When you hear both telling of the tales there, Bob, which characterization stands out to be truest, do you think?
Well, look, it's very difficult to believe anything that comes out of the Trump administration because they lie about everything. They lie to the American people about killing of innocent people by ICE agents. I mean, basically, when they open their mouth, they're probably lying. And not to say that the Prime Minister doesn't shade the truth either. But given the fact that he made a statement that was applauded around the world for saying what the world has become increasingly aware of, that you have to stand up to economic bullies, and we saw the Europeans more or less agree with that. In fact, many of them echoed the same comments. And the fact that the Prime Minister was able to tell the reporters right away that, no, this is exactly what I told the President, and here's why. You've decided to take these kind of actions, and so we are going to have to find other trading partners to diversify, and we're going to have to work together with other countries. It seemed to me that what the Prime Minister said, I believe that over what the Trump administration is saying.
Tonda?
Well, 2 days running, the Prime Minister has said he stands by that speech, the content of that speech. And yes, there is some debate about whether or not he poked the bear of the U.S. And there are concerns among some business leaders that, what will be the fallout? Trump himself has threatened 100% tariffs on Canada. That's no laughing matter. If he follows through, that's a big question. Will he follow through? If he does, Scott Bessent's not wrong. That could be a disaster for many Canadian exporters and for the economy here. But I don't think there's any world in which Mark Carney's going to walk back that speech. He put a lot of thought into it. He wrote it himself. It was delivered to a room full of political and business elites who gave him a standing ovation. The next day, before he left, before Trump spoke, he met with business leaders there and heard many of the same kinds of comments that we've seen published by other political leaders. They liked it. They liked that someone finally stood up and said it. But there are contradictions in what he did, right? He said it's important to call out the bullies and to react to them. Well, in the speech, he didn't actually name Donald Trump. He didn't go so far as that. So there are some contradictions, but I don't think that he's going to at all distance himself from those comments. That is the framework, the doctrine now that shapes his foreign policy.
Joël-Denis, what's your read?
The fact that the U.S. administration is still talking about that speech today just shows how much Mr. Carney unsettled him, if I may say. And I think they were told the plain truth that Mr. Trump is not behaving according to rules of the law, and that will have consequences for them too, not only for the allies that they're turning their back on, but also for them. And that's, I think, they're trying to put out there a parallel version of reality. Like Bob said, the people around Mr. Trump are doing like Mr. Trump. They're putting out lies, outright lies about what's happening. And so if I have to pick between two versions of events, I will pick the one from the
Well,
Prime
and
Minister.
also the Prime Minister's message was reinforced by European leaders in the way they handled Greenland. They all stood up to the president on this issue, and they were threatening economic action of their own, retaliation of their own, that rattled the markets. And a concern about the sell-off of U.S. Treasury, that kind of put the president back into retreat. And so I think what Carney was saying is that, these are powerful economies. I think he was also talking about China, too. It wasn't just the United States, because both China and the United States use their economic leverage, and they use tariffs to try to bully people. And the fact that the Europeans stood up on Greenland, I think that gave people a lot more confidence that going forward, we cannot just let this man, or China for that matter, bully people in this kind of way.
The kind of unnoticed, I think, part of the Davos speech was that Carney wasn't just speaking to political leaders, other nations, other middle powers to band together and find strength in numbers. He was also speaking, and in the text said, companies and countries. So he was calling out corporate executives who are also kowtowing to the U.S. or China in their own self-interest, and saying it's time for people to recognize that's not the way that's going to win it. That bargain is over. So
and I do wonder about the tactic, though, too. That it's actually proven to work, because here you have Donald Trump, within 24 hours of Davos, chastising Canada with his own speech, and Carney calling out Mark in his own speech when he was in Switzerland. Then he threatens to slap this 100% tariff this weekend. He disinvites Carney from being part of the Board of Peace. But then after all of that, if you listen to the Prime Minister, he calls Mark Carney to talk about trade and security issues, which I wonder whether or not the Prime Minister has a better read on how to deal with Donald Trump than others.
That's the whole situation you just described just shows one thing, that Mr. Trump is angry at Mr. Carney for stealing the show, because he gave a better show at Davos. He thought he was going to steal the show. He did not. And since then, it's all about Mr. Carney, the Governor Carney, the 100% tariffs on Canada, and that would hurt also the United States if you were to impose 100% taxes on all exports. We export oil, 4 million barrels a day. We export electricity. Would he impose 100% on that? That would kill probably the economy in some U.S. states. So it would be a very difficult thing to apply. And also, we are reestablishing correct commercial relationship with China. That's it, that's all. We're not entering into a free trade deal with China, because it's not a market economy, and that is not allowed under COSMA.
But having said that, it's important that the Prime Minister try to have a good relationship with the U.S. President.
It's good for him. Yes.
It's good for it's good for him that he stood up to him. Bullies need somebody to stand up to them. Often they respect you at the end of the day. If you roll over for them all the time, he'll just continue to crush you. So maybe out of this whole fight between the two of them, that they can get back to a relationship where they can get some things done. One can only hope, but we're all dealing with a baby in the White House, and he does tantrums, and who knows. But I'm hoping that, and I'm sure the Prime Minister is hoping that he can get back to a better relationship with the President.
And what is noteworthy also is the fact that Mr. Carney is not chasing Mr. Trump. It was Mr. Trump who phoned Mr. Carney. And there is a new attitude, I would say, I can see it within the government towards Washington. It's whatever they do, whatever they says, whatever.
Yeah, whatever they do. And I hear what you're saying, Bob, about we need to work with the United States, our nearest neighbor, our closest or our biggest trading partner at this moment in time.
And that can be done through, ministers. Dominique LeBlanc with Jamieson Greer, the U.S. ambassador on trade. That can be done more at that level, because Mr. Trump is all over the map on many issues, and he changes his mind within 5 minutes.
Okay. And in the meantime, Mark Carney continues to talk about diversifying Canada's trade partners. He's had a very busy 2 weeks. He went to China, he went to Qatar, he went to Davos, back to Quebec City, and then back here in Ottawa. How successful has he been, though? You know, because I think that's a question it raises. If you're going to give such a clear speech in Davos criticizing the way the United States is moving forward without naming the United States, how successful has these trips been, or have these trips been? Because to hear from Conservatives, they think it's all bluster and not yet proof in the pudding.
I think that's a work in progress. I think that's a hard thing to measure. We don't actually know. For example, when he went to the United Arab Emirates a few months ago and came back touting a $70 billion investment deal. Well, we actually don't know where has that investment been directed, gone. We were told in Qatar that they are going to invest their sovereign wealth funds into nation building projects in Canada. Which ones? What have they been invited to invest in? And is Qatari money going to go into building a pipeline for Canada? We were told in an offhanded way, not through a briefing where these things were clarified, that no, not a pipeline. So it's really, I think, important to measure the success or the progress, but I think that at this point, the Carney government is far less transparent on those markers.
Still, I think he can show some results because he settled a trade irritants with China, with the canola producers. That's going to make a big difference for them. And he brought along a premier to show him how Canadian diplomacy works.
Well, the premier invited himself along.
Okay.
He did not bring the premier. Scott Moe texted from Vietnam and said, "Can I come?"
Still, he was around. He could have said no to that, but as soon as he came back, he tried to make sure that things were smooth with the Premier of Ontario, because he opened the door to electric vehicles. And in the House of Commons today, it's worth noting that Mr. Carney, for the first time, expressed his intention more than ever to build a pipeline. He said the MOU with Alberta will lead to a pipeline. And you've got a Minister of Natural Resources currently in India. For what reason? Probably to sell more oil and natural gas to India, and with a country with which will repair also relationships in the coming months, because Mr. Carney is going there early March, I'm told.
Okay, so we're going to see how well these deals flesh out for Canada. But, you know, I want to now go to Quebec City, because after that speech in Davos, he comes back here, as I say, to Canada, to Quebec City, goes to the Citadel, delivers a speech where I think a lot of people were wondering, okay, the international step was done in Davos, what's the domestic step he's going to take? He talks about national unity, but it falls flat because of a comment he made about the fall of New France and tying that to national unity. Take a listen. And I have to say, what he said in French is probably the more contentious, but this is what we heard from the Prime Minister on that subject in English.
267 years ago, this ground was soaked with blood. Two empires had collided, one had prevailed, and the question was, what will come next? The answer that emerged slowly, imperfectly, not without struggle, but unmistakably, was cooperation, partnership, a shared future. That response was not inevitable. That response was chosen. Chosen by British administrators who eventually saw the wisdom of cooperation. Chosen by French Canadians who eventually committed to build within the new reality.
Okay, so again, that was the Prime Minister in Quebec City from last week. Joël-Denis, I'm going to get you to start us out, because the reaction to it was strong and negative amongst many Quebecers. Talk to us about that reaction. Worthwhile to explain why.
Well, because in French, Mr. Carney presented the Battle of the Plain of Abraham as the step where we started to get along very well. But there were sort of the raccourcis, shortcuts to history, and that brought along strong reactions on the part of the separatist movement in Quebec. The Parti québécois, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, the Parti québécois leaders said Mr. Carney essentially started the national referendum campaign in Quebec. So that's the kind of damage that he may have done to his cause in Quebec. But I think the separatist movement and Quebecers as a whole will move away from that speech and look at the reality where we are right now. Quebecers have a lot of influence in Ottawa. We've got key ministers. François-Philippe Champagne is Minister of Finance, Mélanie Joly, Minister of Industry, and Joël-Denis and other ministers. They have influence. Around Mr. Carney, who's the Chief of Staff, it's Marc-André Blanchard, somebody from Quebec. Michael Sebia, we've adopted him. He ran Hydro-Quebec, he ran the Caisse de dépôt. So it would be hard to say that Quebec is ignoring Ottawa with Mr. Carney, and it was also the case when Mr. Trudeau was in power. Quebec got a lot of money from the Trudeau government while he was in power. So, and also when Mr. Harper was in power, he solved the so-called fiscal imbalance that existed between the provinces and Ottawa. Gave a lot of money to the provinces, didn't meddle into the provincial powers. So we're in a two-election campaign in Quebec this year. You could see the start of that, and Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon is trying to also keep separatist people who voted for Mr. Carney last time around to face Mr. Trump from repeating that in the provincial election.
Yeah, but it does make me wonder how problematic it is to have made that type of comment, to get that type of reception when the polls in Quebec do indicate the Parti Québécois is the most likely party to win the next provincial election come the fall, and that you have a leader with the PQ who's promising to have a referendum within this first mandate. How problematic is that, would you say, Bob?
Well, look, I kind of agree with Joël-Denis that the separatists are going to seize on anything because they're into an election campaign, and their cousins here in the House of Commons are going to echo everything like that. I think with that speech, which I didn't think was very good, by the way, I thought it was could have been a throne speech, but part of the speech was really about national unity, not just the unity of everybody should get with my government and support all our programs, but we're facing a very likely PQ victory in the fall, and a referendum in the first term of a PQ government, and we're having very serious issues in Alberta, potentially with a separatist vote that could take place there. And we know the MAGA movement in the United States, including the Treasury Secretary Scott Benson, has been kind of promoting this, and those are serious issues confronting the country. That's why I kind of think that we're going to end up into I think we're going to get up an election this year.
Don't jump the shark. I'm going to get there. Don't jump the shark.
Okay.
Tonda, before we jump the shark, your thoughts about the reaction and the impact that will have?
Look, I think that perhaps the Prime Minister would never admit it, but he might someday, accept that framing that speech the way he did, where he did, in the moment he did, was probably reaching too high for the high-flying rhetoric. He should have, I think, acknowledged where he was, sure, and talked about unity. But to try and do the big historical arc of a narrative didn't work for him. He's very good at writing and speaking, but he's not the best, and he's not the best speechwriter for himself in those situations. I think that he has had, with all due respect to all the Francophones who are in his circles now, I don't think he has been as alive to what's going on in Quebec for the past 6 months or so since he's been in office. I think he's now very much attuned to it. He has been very alive to the Alberta separatist concern, and a lot of what he's been doing has been Western facing, but not as much Quebec facing, right? So great that he's now being called to account to deal with it, and I think that'll serve him better to pay more attention to the niceties and the nuances. But the Plains of Abraham battle didn't give rise to Canadian unity, it gave rise to two solitudes, right? And so I think, look, his skills are doing business deals and negotiating across big political divides. That's one political divide he hasn't mastered. That's what I'd say. Okay. Do you want to talk about the election? Because let's go.
Okay. It's our favorite topic. Okay, so let me set it up. There has been speculation that the Liberals may pull the trigger sooner, trying to get a majority. Do you think an election is possible in the next little while, Bob?
Yeah, I do think so. We'll wait and see what happens after the Conservative convention and whether they get more floor crossers. But even then, it would be a very minor majority if they were able to get a couple of Conservatives to cross the floor, which is possible. But I just think, given the issues confronting the country with Donald Trump south of the border, Quebec separatism, and potentially a vote in Alberta on that issue, that he can make a case for needing a strong majority government to deal with these major issues confronting the country. And he's in a situation where he's got an opposition leader, conservative leader, who just simply isn't liked by Canadians, and I'm not sure that Pierre Poilievre can turn that around. So I have a sense that we may be into an election campaign. Prime Minister was asked about it earlier this week, and he hemmed and hawed and went all over the place and finally got to the point which, no, we're not going to do this. So that when they go hem and haw all over the place, they're thinking about it.
They're thinking about it. Tonda?
I see a world in which he goes for a majority mandate if he doesn't succeed in getting one before then via floor crossers. And I haven't
But he
ruled
needs
that
like
out.
a significant number to cross over to have to have some cushion, wouldn't he?
2 more.
Cushion? Who needs a cushion? If he has a simple majority, he has a majority. And I don't think that, unlike some politicians, that Carney is the kind of politician who likes campaigning and the retail politics of an extended election campaign. I don't think that's his jam. I think his jam is doing deals, traveling around the world. He's got, I don't know, up to 8 or 10 trips likely in his agenda this year. I think he'd rather do that. But if he doesn't achieve the peace of mind he wants to get his parliamentary agenda pushed through via floor crossers and a majority, and he sees the opportunity, if all the political stars align with the polls, Pierre's troubled, Pierre Poilievre is troubled, and a bunch of other things, Trump, starts elevating tariffs on Canada again. If there's a world in which he can do that and the polls look good for him to get a majority, sure, I bet he'd go for a snap election. I don't rule that out at all.
If
Joël-Denis?
he's inclined to go to the polls, there's a small window in my sense, and that would be May or June, because in the fall there's a Quebec election, and you cannot have a federal election at the same time as the Quebec election because you've got similar workers working in Quebec and election and the federal election. But my sense is that, and he will be very busy traveling, as Tonda mentioned. He's going to India beginning of March. Australia also joined to that trip. So can he have time to plan for an election with all the trips ahead and the big business that he has in mind? Seeking big projects, investment from other countries. And I share Tonda's view that I don't think Mr. Carney likes to do campaign. He wants to govern. And so I'm sure that he will put more emphasis on trying to lure more Tory MPs to his camp than to try to go to the polls.
Could he have put Michael Maw and Chris D'Entremont any more in the window than he has? Today, they were front and center in the House of Commons. D'Entremont was sitting next to him. Michael Maw got a lobball question, got up to brag about, how his role and what he's doing there. He was all over the Chinese meetings on that trip. He had the biggest grin on his face when he was coming up over those plane steps that you've ever seen.
And you should see social media. Have you noticed social media, all the stuff about Carney? On X and on Facebook and on TikTok, all about building Canada, making the Canada the best and most prosperous country in the world.
He doesn't like to talk to Canadian reporters as much as, so his media game with reporters canceling the news conference in Quebec City, that's one thing. But when it comes to social media and digital media, they are on their game. They're pushing it out there. They're messaging all across those platforms.
Yeah, after being dormant for so long for that party.
Yeah.
Listen, we're going to switch over a couple of topics, but very, very quickly. I need a quick go around because in a couple of days the Conservative Convention begins in Calgary. Just quickly, what are you watching out for, Bob?
Well, the vote. If he gets below 80%, I think he's going to be in trouble.
Pierre Poilievre.
Yes, Pierre Poilievre.
Tonda?
Yeah, I agree. The number. What's the number? What's the threshold? What's the threshold that allows Poilievre to stay in the job and also push back whatever caucus concerns there might be as well? I don't think it's just, what is the vote this weekend from grassroots members. They've engineered that convention so that it's in the West, the people who could go, there are very few, you were saying earlier, very few Quebecers going. Yeah. And a lot of Ontario Conservatives are staying at home to go to the Ontario Provincial Conservative Convention this weekend. So what's the number? And if it's good enough to get him past that, does his caucus rally behind him?
Okay,
Joël-Denis. The score, I expect Mr. Poilievre to get about 80%, but I'll also be watching who shows up at that convention. Will there be people who support MAGA movement who show up at that convention, or even people who support Alberta's separation that show up at that convention? Because there are conservative elements in the Conservative Party who favor those ideas.
And watch for Monday morning to see if there are any Conservative MPs crossing to the Liberals.
Okay, you heard it here first. Okay, so Tonda asked the question, what's the threshold? That's always my question when we wrap up and switch to my favorite part, not Tonda's, which is the yays and the nays. So, Bob, I'll get you to start. Yays and the nays.
Well, my nay is to Donald Trump for throwing a major temper tantrum at the Prime Minister and threatening tariffs, and then having his Treasury Secretary go out and try to trash the Prime Minister again. So that's my nay.
Okay, yay?
My yay is, I still, because we haven't been on the program before, I still think that the big standout thing for me was that remarkable speech in Davos. The Prime Minister, I think he spoke for a lot of countries in the world, the way he described the bullying tactics of, which he didn't mention by name, but obviously he was speaking about the United States and China, but largely about the president.
Tonda, yays and nays?
I mean, yay, because the Davos speech was a meaty, powerful, punchy speech. But my nay would be to the next day speech in Quebec City. I think that was a missed mark. He missed the mark on it and missed the opportunity to set out a domestic agenda that would unite people.
My yays goes to François Legault, the Premier of Quebec, who announced his resignation because by leaving his position, he will give Quebecers more options to pick among the many parties that will be trying to convince Quebecers to vote for them. So it's not a given that the Parti Québécois will win a majority. My prediction here tonight, I think it's going to be a minority government, maybe PQ, maybe Liberal, maybe CAC. So it's all open up the games for Quebec political parties. It's an open landscape, and who knows what will happen. It's going to be a box full of surprise. My nays goes to the Prime Minister's office for not giving us a readout of his phone call between him and the President. They talked for half an hour. Many details were discussed. Yes, it was on his cell phone, but still Canadians have the right to know what he says and tells Donald Trump.
It is a question that the Prime Minister hates. When did you last talk to the President? And we always ask his staff before he comes up to a microphone, has he talked? Have they talked? When have they talked? He does not want to answer the question, but enough is enough. Really, we're
he's
past
the only
that.
Prime Minister who does this.
Well, in fact, in Quebec City, he was asked that question, and his answer was, "That's a boring question."
That's a boring question.
No, it's not
That's
boring.
not newsworthy. I'll tell you if it's newsworthy. That's not good enough.
Yeah.
He's not my news editor. He's the Prime Minister.
Aren't you the news editor? Anyways, okay, very quickly, I think we may have done it already, but let's do a quick look ahead right now. Parliament is back. What are you looking ahead to, Bob?
Well, I'm going to watch the results of the Conservative vote, and then I'm going to see if there's any defections afterwards to the Liberals.
Okay, pop the popcorn.
Yeah, the fallout from that vote is huge. Also, I think that let's see just how Trump follows through on all these threats. If Mark Carney truly isn't backing off the Davos speech and the way he's characterized it and his move to reconcile tariffs with China, let's see how Trump reacts to that. I think that's an untold story.
Yeah. Although I do wonder how much of it is derailed for Trump right now with everything that's happening in Minnesota.
Everything that's happening. Yeah, no, 100%.
Joël-Denis?
I'll be watching whether the First Minister's meeting taking place in Ottawa will produce more Team Canada unity, or some provinces will try to pull the, in their own way. Mr. Carney tried to, make sure that there's peace between him and Mr. Doug Ford. Bromance is still going on between the two. So that spirit in the face of the U.S. threats, I think, is necessary. So we'll see whether that unity remains among Mr. Carney and the premiers.
Yeah, he had a bump, but the bromance lasts, as we saw. So, Bob, Tonda, Joël-Denis, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And you have been listening to the episode this week. I'm Michael Serapio. That has been the Bureau Chiefs with Michael Serapio, a primetime politics podcast from CPAC.